Second day of Saints training camp in the books. That's Doug Mouton. I'm Ricardo Lecompte. And we've had a couple of standouts today, and one that you really were kind of raving about. And he looks faster. Maybe it's because of the number change. Maybe that's the reason why.
Yeah.
Rashid Shaheed.
Rashid Shaheed has been terrific so far in this camp. And look, I thought Chris Olave said it well. I asked Chris Olave about Shaheed. He said he's quick and fast. And those are two different things. Fast is obviously just straight line speed. Quick is that first step.
Yeah.
And Shaheed's first step, I think one thing he does that you can see in practice, he tracks balls as a punt returner or a kick returner. He tracks balls like a center fielder. His first step when the right off the foot of the punter is always true. I bet he was a center fielder at some point younger. But look, I think Rashid Shaheed's been terrific. Quickness before we put on the pads is something that stands out, and quickness is something that translates to every level of football in every position, and Shaheed looks quick right off the bat. Give me somebody.
Yeah, and it was kind of curious with the, not curious, but it was actually kind of just good to see some rotation that we saw in the defense in day two, and Payton Turner was actually running with the ones, and he was looking just as good running against those starting offensive linemen in some of the 11-on-11 drills that we saw. And we're going to see some of this where Dennis Allen mentioned that he wants to see somebody seize that defensive end spot opposite of Cam Jordan. Payton Turner had some injuries last season. Looks like he could take that next step. But again, they haven't put the pads on. But so far, without the pads, he does have that, as you mentioned, that quickness that you kind of want to see without the pads, especially the technique. He looks really good as well. Alontae Taylor also switched around. He did the ones. He was rotating with Paulson Adebo today, and he also made a few plays out there as well. That's going to be a fun competition in that second cornerback spot between Paulson Adebo and Alontae Taylor. Alontae Taylor in his second season, I have him as one of my breakout players because I think he's going to get a lot more playing time, even if he doesn't win that job. Certainly, they've been trying to work him in the slot, but I feel like the Saints are going to find many ways to get him on the field this year, and I think he's going to make a bunch of plays on defense. Those are two guys, I think defensively, when you're watching them, they have a chance to maybe see some more playing time this upcoming season.
Well, there's no question the playing time is available at that spot opposite of Cam Jordan, the other defensive end. And look, Cam Jordan said yesterday, it means nothing for the big guys until the pads go on, but you can only work with what you have.
Yes.
And they're working right now. Dennis Allen called it in their underwear, and the fact is, in his underwear, Payton Turner has looked good in these two practices, and that does, in fact, mean something. Look, you want to jump off the page, and he has been able to do that. And look, you and I were watching practice together, and another guy who did it, and we're starting to see a little bit from Brian Brzee. Brian Brzee is a guy, obviously you see the pure athletic ability. He is a huge young man, and we saw it a little bit today. He has ridiculous quickness for a guy his size.
Yeah, it was one of the plays where he just was already in the backfield and beat the center, got into the backfield, disrupted the play. Those are one of those guys when we see the pads on, we're going to get a really good indication of how good he is. But there is a reason why when you go, hey, we need a guy with that athleticism, we're going to take him in the first round. He has all those other traits that you see. It just doesn't translate to football. He was very productive at Clemson. If he can kind of translate that to the NFL, at least give him at least another good rotational player. If not somebody who can be a good starter, then that's a win for a Saints interior defensive line that was depleted this offseason. They made a lot of other changes. Speaking of one of those guys, Kalen Saunders didn't finish practice today because it was a heat-related illness in terms of them not being able to finish practice. He started practice but wasn't able to finish. Keith Kirkwood, the wide receiver, was another guy.
And Mark Evans.
And Mark Evans as well were also guys that didn't finish the practice because of the heat. And we were talking about kind of how it felt. You felt it was hotter today than it was yesterday.
And Ryan Ramczyk said it doesn't matter whether it's 92 or 99.
It's hot.
It's just hot.
It's hot. Yeah, but it is a kind of important thing, and we're kind of talking about how do these players manage this heat, because it is nothing. It's not a joke. And when you have players who can't finish practice because of it, it's a real deal. And this is something that's not only happening here in a Saints training camp, but other places in the NFL where they're dealing with record heat, and certainly the Saints are not immune to that.
No, we're not immune to that here. And look, players everybody has to be vigilant. Dennis Allen talked about it. One other guy I do want to mention, and I don't even have a specific about him. I just love everything I'm seeing out of Marshawn Lattimore 2 days in. And I can't point to one particular play, although he had a nice battle with Mike Thomas on one play today. I just like everything I'm seeing about his attitude and what he's doing. Dennis Allen said he challenged DA after the first practice to run wind sprints. And look, all the coaches ran him again on day 2, and DA wound up lining up with the defensive lineman. He took the 5th on whether that was on purpose. He didn't run with the DBs, which was a coach making a smart move. But I really like what I've seen in Lattimore.
Yeah, and speaking of Day, he was smart where he was positioned because next to them were the offensive linemen.
Yeah.
So you're seeing Da get to the end.
And he's beating them all.
And he's beating all the offensive linemen. We were talking about competition, speaking of that, and I think that kicking competition in terms of Will Lutz, I think he's still going to end up winning the job. But Blake Grupe had 6 attempts at kicks today, made all 6 from various distances, from extra points out to the 45. I mean, it was true, and he was kicking into a wind.
And he has shocking power.
Shocking power, guys. I mean, he is. I don't think he's at least 5'3", maybe became the thing.
I mean, I feel like he's smaller than me.
Probably that, yeah.
And he has shocking power off that leg.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that's something to watch, where at least they have somebody pushing Will Lutz, who didn't have his best season in 2022, but at least they have somebody that can kind of challenge him and be like, hey, you've got to kick better, and here's at least a guy who can do that. And certainly Blake Grupe looked good kicking as well in that. One injury note to pass along: Trevor Penning is day-to-day with a foot injury. It's not related to the foot injury that foot surgery had this offseason, but it's something to monitor. And again, if he has to miss significant time, then we're talking about who's going to be at left tackle, because right now we've penciled him as the starter at left tackle. But if he's got a lingering injury, that could be problems for the Saints on that offensive line.
It was James Hurst at left tackle today, and Dennis Allen did say it was minor.
Yes.
And he didn't. And look, Dennis Allen too has been fairly honest. When he says it's minor, it's been minor. When he says it's not minor, it's been not minor. So taking him at his word, we believe it's minor. It was James Hurst there today, but there's some battles along the offensive line that are going to get really interesting when the pads go on, because Trey Turner's been a great player in this league, and James Hurst is a really good player that if Penning starts at left tackle, in theory doesn't have a starting spot, he can challenge anyone.
Yeah, and that's kind of what the Saints have built with this roster the last few years in terms of offensive linemen and versatility of moving the guard to tackles, and certainly they can do that if they lose someone like Trevor Penning. Again, minor, but just looking down the road in case it does have anything lingering, they at least have somebody or some people that can work in those different positions. All right, the Shells will go on tomorrow, on Friday, for the Saints, but until then, Doug Mouton, Ricardo Lecompte here at the Saints practice facility after day 2 of training camp.